Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Where'd Lou go? Oh, take care, Lou.
Okay, see you,
My
Mayor.
screen kept changing. I lost you for a second.
Sorry.
Okay, it's not your fault.
18th of September, Rabbi Levitt, Gemora.
Omar, Rav, Yehoshua ben Lay, um, Yeshua ben Levi, lo the dispute of the Ta'anim in the above Mishnah concerns specifically the case of payah collected by a rich man who was not eligible himself to acquire payah for the sake of a poor man. Only in that case is there a dispute. The Rabbi Eliezer Silver holds that me go the E or a car said, since a rich man, if he wants to, can renounce ownership of his possessions. They on me because they lay and thereby become a poor man for whom payah is appropriate. Hasha Torah Nami Jose Lay. Now, too, while he is still in possession of his wealth, the payer is also regarded as appropriate for him. Boy, the Borche, the she, and since he can acquire it for himself, Zoche Nami Makabra Ray, he can also acquire it for the sake of his fellow, the poor man. By a combination of these two sense arguments, Rabbi Yasser maintains that the rich man's acquisition of a payah on behalf of the poor recipient is effective.
Okay. So do we have some Rashi over here to read? Let's take a look. Mishaliket Esapeya.
Me shalutate with the payas, someone who gathered up or the payer, a person, she'enu bal sada, who's not the field owner. The eve bal sada, once it was the owner who did it, lo omar, Rabbi Eliezer would not say zacha that he merits it. The leikalamema, because you'd be able to say amigo on this case. The zache l'nafshe, if he's able to say I merit it for myself. The afilu who ani, even if he's a poor person, mushar, he'd be recognized.
He's warned against. He's forewarned in this regard.
He's warned. Shalom paya. You shouldn't take the paya, gather up the paya, out of your field. You're not supposed to do that. The pay is supposed to be left for the aniyim. The Amar we say the shchita schulim in
name of the parak.
Yeah, that's okay. The parak in daf kuflamed aleph over base low tilakei. You should not gather la'ani for an ani lahaz here to be warned an ani al shalo, a poor person of himself
on property that he owns. And even though he's an ani, he might otherwise qualify, I guess, even though he has property. We still call him an ani. But that Gemara over there in Shchitas Chulin, it learns from those words. Sounds like that's words from a pasuk. Lo salaket la'ani. That the Gemara over there learns lahazhir, to make an azhara, a warning, like a lav, not something you're not allowed to do. Lahazhir, who is it warning directed at? Ani al shalo. It's the warning is directed at someone who is an ani al shalo, in regard to things that belong to him. In other words, properties that he owns that grow produce. He's not allowed to take. He's not allowed to take from them. A name that are anim, and the property does not belong to them. That's what the matanas for the anim are designated for. Okay, so that's a whole long Rashi talking about this. That the subject of this Mishnah in Peah, Misha Liket Esapeah, Rashi makes a big point of saying we're talking about an Adam Ba'alma, She'enu Balas Bal Soda. He's just a Adam Ba'alma, means he's like a person from the world. Eno Bal Sada. He has no connection to this field. He's not the owner of this field that he's doing these malakit from. Okay. Oh, so we said over there in the Mishnah, Misha Like Esapeya, V'ama Harezu Leploni Ani. So he's an Adam Ba'alma, who's an Ani, and he picks up the Peya, and he says, I've picked it up for Ploni. This is for Ploni, the Ani. So that's a machlekes, Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer says, Zocha, Zochalo. He can cause that other Ani to acquire this Peya. Because a person can be mizaka another person in Peya. And the Chachamim say, no, Yitnenu Ani Hanimsa Rishon. What he did has no force and effect. Doesn't ineffective totally. And what does he do? Yitnenu Ani Hanimsa Rishon. He gives it to the first ani that he meets up with, not the one that he designated in his statement. Okay, that's what it says in the Mishnah. And on
Yeah, well, the whole concept of the Rashi thing makes a lot of sense in that. I mean, that's like, can you imagine? He owns the field, and he has to set aside leket for the ani. He says, well, I'm an ani, so I'm going to acquire it. So that does sound like you're not really doing your job. It's playing a game to keep the stuff. That's why he shouldn't get away with it on that line, to say it's mine. So that's what Chulin is saying.
Yeah, I think they're learning it out from that those words, which I think are a pasuk. Lo salake la'ani. Okay, now, so after the Gemora brought this Mishnah in Peah, then we got a statement from the Amaroim. Amar Ula, in the name of Reb Shua ben Levi, this machlekes between the Tanoim in that Mishnah that we just got through saying, that's in regard to a case of a usher to an ani. In other words, the one that's picking it up, he's not an ani. He's an usher. and he wants to pick it up and be mezakeh an ani with this payah. So in that case, we got a machlekes, Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Migu di boy mafkenichse v'habi ani v'chazile." Since he could become an ani, Ashtanami chazile. So even though he's not now an ani, he's able to. He'd be able to do that. And migu di zochel nafshe zochel nami lechabre. Since he would be able to be Zoka, be Mizaka himself in the Peah, so he's able to also be Mizaka somebody else. But the Rabbanim say, no. Had Migu Amrinin, Trey Migu Lo Amrinin. Very interesting svara of the Chachamim. We could say one Migu, but we don't say two. Okay. What are the two migos that Rabbi Eliezer said? He said, first migo was migo that he could make himself an ani. So therefore he qualifies to do this. And then we said migo that he could acquire it for himself. He could acquire it for somebody else also. So that's two migos. So we're going to say you can't say two migus. Okay, so that's the machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. When you got an ashir who's trying to take the payah for an ani, and the question is whether he qualifies. Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim. But they go on and say about me ani la ani dibra kol zochalo. If the person who's picking up is also an ani, and he wants to be mezakeh a different ani in this payah by picking it up, and he has in mind to be mezakeh him, so he'll own the payah, then dibra kol zochalo, it works. Why? Because then you only got one migu. Migu de zochel lenafshe, zochel nami lechabre. Since he himself could pick it up and be zocha in it for himself, so too, he could, since he could do that, he could also do it for somebody else. It's only one migu. The Chachamim are going to say, fine, no machlokes in that case. Okay, so now we go to Rashi. Rashi's got some comments on these words that we said over here. First, Rashi is masir me'ashir la'oni. That's where the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim exists. Lou.
Yes.
Please. Me'ashir la'oni.
In the Rashi?
Rashi.
Let's see, down here in the Gemora, Me'asher.
1, 2, 3, 4 lines down from where the Gemora starts in the Rashi.
Shashir, who, Shelikta, Litzrach,
Litzorech,
Binu.
Ha'ani.
I'm sorry, Ha'ani. That he is wealthy. Shalikta, I don't know.
He gathered it for him.
What?
He gathered the amount for him.
He,
It was like leket. It's like gathering together.
he's wealthy from gathering leket?
No, he's wealthy. It's a wealthy person that was gathering it, litzorech ha'ani, for the needs of a poor person.
So he's gathering it for somebody else.
Yeah, it's a wealthy person, but he's gathering it for a poor person.
Yes, so this person who's gathering, he's an usher. Interesting. You know, you see in the Gemara, there's just really 2 categories of people. There's people that's an ani, he's a poor person, he's impoverished. And if he's not poor and impoverished, what is he? He's an usher. He's rich. That's the Gemora's definition of rich, that you're not poor. So this usher, he doesn't have any authorization to acquire paya for himself, because he's an usher. It's only designated for someone who's an ani. But he's saying, "Oh no, I'm not collecting for myself. I'm collecting for my friend Ploni, the ani." So now we got a machlokes over here in the Mishnah, whether he's able to do that, whether it works, whether it's effective. Rebbe Lezer says it's effective, and Chachamim say no, it's not. Okay, next Rashi, Migu de Zochel Nafshe. Phil.
Next Rashi, if the Migo sins, the Zochel, because he can acquire it for himself. The Ba'i Hazeh, and if he needs this, Zachin, he can do it. Well, if he can merit it for himself. Im Hagba Latzmo, if he lifts it by him for himself.
Right. So this is the first migu. Since he could, well, actually, it's not the first migu. The first migu we saw, right, because we're talking about an usher. The first migu is since he could make himself an ani by being mafkir all of his possessions. Since he theoretically could do that, so that's the first migu, that he could make himself eligible to collect for himself. So therefore he is he's able, that means he's able to collect it. He's able to collect it. It's chazile. Wow, you know what that means, really? Okay. But what Rashi's going on, he's going on the second migu. The second migu is migu de zachel nafshe. That's the second step. Oh, Alan's just a second.
Well, Alan's just stopped before those extra words with the second migo.
What's that?
Well, I'm trying to look for why. I mean, we're talking again about it. I'm trying to look where the word migo was twice.
The excuse was the flood proof. Remember that kept the Secret Service from seeing the shooter. Well, what was it this time?
The golf course is surrounded by shrubs.
Okay, what are the two migus? Take a look in the Gemora again. Migu number one is, remember, we're talking about an usher. Talking about an usher who wants to collect paya on behalf of an ani and be mazaka the ani. So,
yeah.
So we got two migus. The first migu is this is Rebbe.
Okay.
Rebbe Eliezer says migu de iboy mafkin niksei. Since if he wanted this rich man, he could be mafkir all of his nechasim, v'havi ani, and then he would become an ani.
Yeah, and then he could take it. Yeah, okay.
V'chazile, and then it would be fitting. Then it would be right fitting for him to take it even. Since he could theoretically do that, and theoretically he could make himself capable of taking it. So then we go to migu number two. He doesn't want it for himself. He wants it for somebody else. We say, oh, that's migu number two. Since a person who it's fitting for him to take it for himself, since he could take it for himself if he wanted to, he could also therefore take it for another person. That's the second migu. So in order for this work, in order for this kinyan to work, you got to have two migus. So Rabbi Eliezer says, yeah, you could do two migos, and the Chachamim say, no, you cannot. Okay, but these words that Rashi's talking about migu number 2. Migu de zochi lenafshe. Since he could take it for himself and make an acquisition in it, that's the first part of this migu. First part of this migu here. Okay, so Phil, it's your turn.
We want to what? We just did that migo.
Migu de zoch lenafshe, we read this?
Yeah.
The E-boy, if he wanted to, have zoch lenafshe. He could be zoch in it for himself.
If he lifts it for himself, yeah, he can do that.
How would he do that? He would do the same exact action, but he would just be doing it for himself. With in mind, he has in mind to make the kinyan for himself. Okay, fine. Okay, next Rashi, chad migu.
But it's like 1 week migo. There's one migo, and that chad migo is from an ani to an ani, from one poor person to another poor person.
Yeah, this is the statement of the Chachamim. Chamim sabre chad migu amrinen. 1 migu, we say that you could say trei migu, but 2 of them lo amrinen. We don't say that you could say that. Oh, so Rashi's identifying which migu it is when he says chad migu. Interesting. Rashi says chad migu it will work. What's the case of chad migu? Who's there? Lou, are you there?
We said chad migo already. It's just from one poor person to another poor person. Chad migo from one ani la'ani to another ani.
But did we read it? We didn't read it yet.
That was that extra line about the Chachamim, right? You didn't really read that line, and this is that. And the answer is that there are 2, according to the Chachamim. You don't say 2.
Yeah, in the Gemora we read it. I'm just saying now we're reading the Rashi.
The Rashi's 2 words from one person, ani la'ani, from one poor person to another poor person. That's the ani. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Chad migu. Okay, so that takes care of that. So that's the 1 migu that we're talking about. The Chachamim agree that you could say 1 migu. What's that? The migu from one ani to another, meaning he's going to say migu de zochel and nafshe zochel nami lechabre. Since he could be zochel in it for himself, he could be zochel in it for his fellow ani. Okay. Okay, now we go back to the Gemora. Because Gemora concluded, right, that's 1 migu. Okay, now up to the Gemora. Amar le Rav Nachman lu'ula. Amar le Rav Nachman lu'ula. About 5 lines from the bottom of the Amud. And we call upon Roy to do the reading.
Rav Nachman Ula. Rav Nachman said to Ula, V'leima ma'ani la'ani ma'chalal kaf. Marakis. Let Master say instead that the dispute in the Mishnah is in regard to payah collected by a poor man for a different poor man.
Wow.
So the article says that is say that even in the case where the collector requires only one migo argument to establish his right to the payer, the sages rule that he cannot acquire it on behalf of another poor person. So Rav Nachman, leave that or continue?
Yeah, read further, please.
Rav Nachman now attempts to prove his interpretation of the Mishnah in Peah. Daha Metzia Hakol Anaim Etzla. For surely all are considered poor in regard to a find. That is, any person in the world is entitled to acquire ownerless property for himself, just as a poor man is entitled to take a payer. Usanan, yet we have learned in our, I'm turning over to 9b4, we have learned in our Mishnah, Ahaya Rachev al Gabei Behema. If someone was riding on an animal, Ra'a es Metzia, and he cited a find, the Hama the Chabiro, and he said to his fellow, Tana Li, give it to me, Natala, and that other person took it, the Amar, and Ani, and then said, I have acquired it for myself. He has indeed acquired it for himself. So the last scroll goes into this. Apparently, the Mishnah is discussing a case in which the pedestrian initially picked up the fine on behalf of the rider, and only afterwards reconsidered and decided to keep the fine for himself. Nevertheless, the Mishnah rules that the initial act of acquisition on behalf of the rider was not effective, and the pedestrian can keep the fine for himself. Now the Mishnah's ruling is understandable if you say if that the dispute in the Mishnah in Peah is a regard to Peah collected by a poor man for a poor man, as I, Rav Nachman, maintain. Now we turn over to 10. Okay, 10a. Mishnah San Magi. For our Mishnah then follows whose opinion? Rabbanon, it follows the opinion of the sages of the Mishnah in Peah. Elohi Amaras V'Ashir V'Ani Machalachet. But if on the other hand you say that the dispute of the Mishnah in the Peah concerns the case of a rich man and a poor man, as you will assert, of Aval Ma'ani Ba'ani Divrei Achil Zikor Lo. But if the payer is collected by a poor man or a poor man, everyone would agree that the collector has effectively acquired it for the other's sake. Money. Then whose opinion does this Mishnah of ours follow? Lo Ravadan, lo Eliezer. It follows neither the opinion of the sages nor of Reb Eliezer. And then Ula rebuts this for two.
Okay, so you said a mouthful over here, the many, many steps over here. So let's go back to the beginning, see where we could get our bearings over here. So first of all, Rav Nachman said to Ula was the one who said in the name of Rabbi Shubin Levi that the machlekes tanoim is in the case of an ashir who picks it up for an ani. But if an ani would pick it up for another ani, then they would all agree that it would work. The one ani number one would be able to be mazak ani number two. And Rav Nachman says it can't be. He says no. Let's say that the machlekes between the Tanoim and the Mishnah and Peah is in the case of one ani who wants to be mezaka a second ani, and that's the case that the Rebbe Lezer and Chachamim were arguing about. Okay, that's what he wants to say. And we're going to leave out why it is that he says what he says. Just want to keep the thought in mind. Hold the cup over here, because he says he brings from our Mishnah. Remember our Mishnah that we just got through learning yesterday. If you've got a rider and a pedestrian, and the first case our Mishnah said over here on the page, just a few lines up, you got a rider, and it's a Metzia. He sees a lost item. Anybody could be zocha in it. But and he says to somebody, you called him, the art scroll calls him a pedestrian. He's walking along, and he says, Tanali, give that item to me. So if the guy takes it, Notla, the Amar, Ani Sachisi. He takes it and he picks it up for himself. Now, the way Roy read this over here, according to the art scroll, you read it that he changed his mind. He originally picked it up for the guy, and then he says, you know what? I want it for myself. And so that's the way, for some reason, the art scroll says that the case is working over here. And even in that case where he changes his mind, we say that zochabo, it'll be effective. The person that picked it up can change his mind and decide that he wants to acquire it himself, and he will acquire it. So okay, that's step two. Now on that, the Gemora says, now who's the one that holds like this? Who's the one that holds like this in this Mishnah? If you say between the Tanaim in the Mishnah in Peah, Masnis and money. See, if you say that the machlekes in Peah is when you got one ani that wants to be mazaket for a second ani, you want to say that's a machlekes, and that means that the Rabbanan say it won't even work in that case. Ani number one wants to be mazaket for ani number two, it won't work. It doesn't work. Even one migu he doesn't say, the chachamim. If you're going to say like that, so then you'll be able to say that our Mishnah over here is clearly going like the Rabbanan. But if you say, we're not going to explain that, but we're just getting the thread. If I don't know if everybody's following the story over here, but it's quite a long, laborious story. It almost sounds like one of Rev Hirsch's sentences. You see that this is what you got to hold cup over here. But if you say that the machlekes over there was from Usher to Ani, that the usher picked it up in the Mishnah in Peah, and he wants to be Mazaka an ani with that Peah. If you want to say that that's the machlokes, but you say that if it's one ani to another ani, oh, then they got no machlokes, like you, Ula, want to say. If that's what you want to, if that's what's going on in the Mishnah in Peah over there, so then Rav Nachman Tainas, this Mishnah here, our Mishnah over here, is not like anybody. It's not like the Rabbanan, and it won't be like Rabbi Eliezer either. So that's difficult to say. Now, why is it that if we say that everyone agrees in the case of ani to ani, why is it that it cannot be like Rabbanan or Rabbi Eliezer? But that's what the Gemora says. So without understanding it, but those are the steps. That's the steps that we got. Okay, now, how much time do we have? We got no time. Okay, so we say goodbye. We got no time. Everybody have a great day. So we work over the proof of Nachman.
Okay.
Very good. Al, say that again.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.